Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. Friday, June the 17th. Ian Cameron with you as the Stanley Cup Final. We get ready for Game 2 coming up Saturday night between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Colorado Avalanche. We will preview that game momentarily. We have another special guest joining us. It's been a great run of special guests on this show since the playoffs began. And we've got another guest joining us today. We're happy to have Kyle Forch joining us here on the show. You can follow him on Twitter at KForch. Kyle, welcome to the Ice Guys show. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're a big hockey fan for sure. You love the sport, and you've got a background in hockey as well. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, as most little kids in Canada, they grow up playing hockey. I played till I was about 13, 14 years old. And then I got into martial arts. And then kind of as I was working my way through university, I went to Mount Royal in Calgary. I got into the scouting aspect of hockey. And I started in junior A in the AJHL for a team called the Calgary Mustangs. I was with them for about 2.5 years. My first season was the 16-17 season. So if you remember, guys like Cale Makar is a big name from that draft year. So I scouted against his team, and there were definitely a lot of times where he was whipping up and down the ice through our team, and some of those highlights made the NHL draft highlights. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot stronger league than people kind of give it credit for. And then from there, I went to the BCHL, and then COVID hit. So through COVID, I started focusing on some other ventures in entertainment. So here we are.
Here you are. Now, have you considered something in hockey down the road, or leaving the door open for a potential some involvement with hockey, or is that a thing of the past now for you?
Yeah, definitely want to be involved in it at some point again. Whether it's a scouting role or an executive role, I've always wanted to own a team, like whether it's a junior team or a minor team, something like that. My business partner and good buddy also still plays professional hockey. So I still have ties to the game. I still keep in contact with a lot of buddies that either played for me or were coaches or other scouts as well. So I've gotten offers here and there, but like I kind of mentioned, through COVID, it made things really tough. And the team that I had started with in Calgary here folded. So we only have one junior A team here, then the Hitmen, and then Flames. Still a lot of hockey, but not my original team. So.
No, it isn't. So you talk about some of the players who are players that you scouted either with or against. You mentioned against Makar when you were, preparing your team and scouting and trying to see, ways we can beat them, things we got to do, strategies, game plans for a specific team or a specific player. Do you find the game plans changed a lot when you were talking about Cale Makar? Now, I know he was at a much younger age and he wasn't fully developed yet, but you could probably see that this guy clearly had some elite level skill, ability, vision, sees the ice extremely well, skates like the wind, incredible passer, moves extremely well, shoots the puck well. I mean, what doesn't Cale Makar do? And if you see now in the NHL level, his defensive game, maybe earlier on, years ago, maybe back to when you were scouting against him, maybe you could say his defensive game wasn't where it should be. You can't say that anymore. I don't know if you could do a better job on Connor McDavid than he often did in that series against the Edmonton Oilers in the West Final. His defensive game has grown leaps and bounds. You could pretty much tell right away, though, when you were scouting against Cale Makar, we got a special talent on our hands right here.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, the things that he was doing in junior, he still does in the NHL. He'll start in his end and skate through every single player on that ice and go top corner as a D-man. I mean, he was doing that in junior. He was doing it in the NCAA. You've seen him do it on more than one occasion in the NHL now. It's just insane, especially coming out of, a league or a level of hockey where people kind of underestimate it in junior A. Everyone thinks major junior is where all the talent's going to come out of, whether it's the WHL, the Q, or the O. And, you see with guys like Makar that it's starting to change, and there's a lot more talent in a lot more places in hockey now, for sure.
And he's thriving right now. And you could argue, I think, after especially the Edmonton series win, the sweep over the Oilers, which I know you took great pleasure in, right? Safe to say?
Absolutely. Especially after they beat my Flames. So
yeah, definitely.
I didn't have to get my head shaved like Biz though. So
No, exactly. At least you kept your hair on your head after
Yeah, exactly.
Calgary lost to Edmonton. Paul Bissonnette was not as fortunate for sure. That was a great scene. Great job by TNT, including that on their broadcast as well. And I know the Chicklets guys talked about that they were very happy that TNT, allowed that to be on the air too during the pregame show for that game with
Yeah,
the Avs and the Oilers. And that's the way you do it. You don't. I know better than anybody as a betting man. You don't, go back on a bet. When you agree to it, you shake hands on it. You got to honor it at the end, win or lose.
yeah,
If you win, you expect the other guy to pay you in kind. If you lose, you got to honor it at the end of the day. That's what a good
absolutely.
person does. That's what an honorable, respectable, reputable person does. And of course,
Yeah,
reputability in my industry has been hard to come by at times, especially 20, 30 years ago when there's a million toll-free phone numbers saying, call 1-800 this, you got my lock of the year in the NFL, and the thing is not even close, and they lose all the time.
yeah,
The old backdoor boiler room scam operations. So that's the kind of uphill battle shit we've been dealing with in the sports betting industry for 30 fucking years. So we've had to overcome that. That's why I tell the people all the time, and credit to Biz, honor your bets, whether they're shaving your head or whether there's money involved, whatever. Honor your bets if you lose them.
absolutely. Especially when there's millions of people looking at you.
Yeah. You look like a douchebag or an asshole or like just absolutely, you'd look awful. The
Yeah,
optics would be terrible if you ended up saying, "Yeah, you know what? I said I'd shave my head if Calgary ended up losing here in these finals, and I'm not going to do it now." They
yeah.
weren't going to let that slide, though. I have a feeling the Chicklets gang. But so in terms of your scouting days, best memory, worst memory of them. What do you got?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I mean, I think the best memory would have been with the Mustangs with that first team. There was a lot of memories in general with them, but just being able. So when I joined them in 16, 17, uh, they we joined about halfway through the season. They brought a new coach, a new GM by the name of Tyler Drader, and I believe I was his first scout or one of the first scouts that they had hired. When this new this staff flip basically, and that just coming in halfway through that season was brutal. It was rough. I mean, we set the record for the least amount of wins in AJHL history at the time. And just going in through that off season, into spring camp and we kind of focused on guys that were diamonds in the rough, if you will, that some of these other big name teams may let slide through the cracks. And these guys ended up being our top scorers in the league who were getting looks by NCAA players. But we went from an 8-win season to a 25-win season and made playoffs the very next year. So kind of being a part of that rebuild essentially was probably my best memory with them. I the worst memory is probably getting swept that year in playoffs after all that work against Camrose. That was a heartbreaking one for sure. And especially when a lot of those guys were, or not a lot of those guys, but a couple of those guys, that was their last year too. And, just seeing the devastation and thereafter, coming off of a crappy season to that rebuild, those guys were feeling it too. Because a lot of those kids going into that season, they're like, oh, we're on the Mustangs. This is going to be, this year's not going to go well. And then, they start gaining that confidence and that they really buy into
Yep.
to the system and the team throughout that year. So that final loss, that getting booted out of playoffs, it was a hard one for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it was tough, painful, especially when you put in all the work and you
Yeah,
ended up having a pretty good run to get to that point, and then all of a sudden to see it end, it's definitely disappointing. Now you're an Alberta boy, so you had a front
I
row
am.
seat to the Battle of Alberta for the first time in 30 years that the
Yeah,
Oilers and the Flames played each other in a playoff series. Was just the back and forth between the two fan bases, the two cities, as wild and as crazy as I seem to think, just looking from the outside, that it looked to be, because it seemed like it was a series where both fan bases back and forth, and it was just something that whether you're a Flames fan or an Oilers fan, regardless of how the series played out, and obviously Edmonton was the one that advanced, sorry to remind you, but uh, in spite of that, it felt like the fan bases, they were just relishing the idea of the Battle of Alberta being back in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It looked like it was just a fun time to be in that province.
yeah, it was insane, especially being in Calgary, and a lot of people have heard of the Sea of Red on 17th Avenue there. I mean, that was in full force. If you didn't have tickets to the game, then your next option was the Red Lot right outside, which was packed every single night. And if you didn't have tickets to that, you had to try to get into a bar somewhere to watch the games. And more often than not, you could be waiting, an hour or two just to get into one of these bars 2-3 hours before the game even. So the city was definitely bought in, whether you were a Flames fan or an Oilers fan. It was great for the province and great for Canadian hockey in general. So it was nice to see. As much as you hate the other team, it was nice to see the two face off in the playoffs for once.
Yeah, no question. It's just you wanted the result to be a little bit different for obvious reasons.
For
No
sure.
question. Look, I'll say it again with that series. Calgary finally had some issues at the end of the Dallas series with giving up too many high danger chances. If you look at Natural Stat Trick and you look at all these websites that chart, high danger chances, expected goals. Dallas was getting a bunch of good looks. They weren't getting a ton of shots. Calgary was out shooting them a ton in that series, but it seemed like a lot of the shots and a lot of the chances Dallas got were quality chances. And Markstrom had to be good. I remember in that overtime, hoping like hell Calgary wins just so we see the Battle of Alberta. Yep. And Tyler Seguin misses a redirect right in front of the net by like inches. It was that close to Dallas winning.
I was having a heart attack.
It was. They were that close, Dallas, to maybe upsetting Calgary. Although Dallas only got to overtime because of Jake Ottinger. He was absolutely incredible that entire series. And for the large part of the playoffs, he's been leading the playoffs in goals saved above average. The advanced metric to measure goaltenders against the best chances, the most dangerous chances. And Ottinger was number one in the NHL after the Stanley Cup playoffs after the first round. In that category, and for good reason. He was just absolutely incredible in that series against Calgary. But they survived, and they went on to play Edmonton. And then against Edmonton, they were still giving up too many of those danger chances. But what was the difference, Kyle? As you know, Edmonton's going to finish those chances probably at a higher clip than Dallas could.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the difference. They had a hard time containing that Edmonton speed. The Edmonton transition game ate them alive. I remember the one game Blake Coleman just drops the puck at not a Blake Coleman type of play, especially if you remember the way he played in Tampa last year. He just leaves the puck at the blue line and it goes the other way and it's in the net. So just the kind of things you can't do against Edmonton, and Calgary paid the price.
Yeah, and especially, Markstrom hasn't played well against Edmonton really all year too. So that was
exactly.
Especially after that first game was another 9-6 game, I think it was. You could just see that the series was going to go one of two ways. Either it was going to be not a goalie's dream at all for either team, or Edmonton was going to figure it out, and they did, and Calgary didn't for the most part. So we can all talk about that goal that was disallowed in Game 5, and who knows if Calgary wins that, then the series could have been completely different. But obviously Calgary had their backs to the wall pretty much the entire time after that first game, and just couldn't get it done.
No, and it was an uphill battle for them most of the series. Now that definitely, you could say, it impacted our ability to win that game that we had to win to stay alive, Game 5. But saying that goal cost them the series is just, you can't say that. Edmonton was better for the majority of the last few games. Yeah, it was a controversial call, didn't go Calgary's way, but nevertheless, as a Flames fan, we'll ask you, what do you want to see this team do in the offseason? They've got some decisions to make. Obviously, they're definitely bringing Daryl Sutter back. There's no question about that. He's done a good job in year one. He's got some of the best press conferences in the NHL. Like I say, some of my favorite memories of him were, we got to score more than one goal. And then they ask him, how do you do that? Score two. That's what he answered with. He's just those blatant, deadpan remarks. And then they ask him too, and this is back when he was with the LA Kings. After a game like that, coach, what do you say to your team? Flight at 11. Yeah. Flight at 11. Nothing about the actual, just those deadpan remarks. Daryl Sutter's a classic. Always a must watch with the press conferences. But as a Flames fan, what do you want to see them do in the offseason with this roster?
Yeah, like you said, Sutter is one of my favorites of all time in terms of coaches. He's a great coach, and like his media remarks are top tier for sure. Like, you put him in there with him, Torts, and some of these couple other guys that don't really care. They're those old school guys, so they're not afraid to address the media in any sort of way. They'll just say what's on their mind. Sometimes it does nothing to do with hockey whatsoever. But you heard Daryl with the geese behind his house the one morning. But so you have to keep Sutter for sure. I want to see Tree Living go at some point. It probably won't be this season, but you getting down to the players, we're fortunate because Chucky is restricted this year, so getting him into a deal for sure is a priority. But Johnny is where the question lies because he's an unrestricted free agent, and I don't know how the rumor mill has been, outside of Calgary, but the rumor for a long time is that Johnny doesn't want to be here and that he's going to Philly. I mean, the rumor for what's been 3-4 years now is that he wants to go to Philly, play with Hazy because he played with Hayes and the NCAA. But going into, or just as playoffs started, I had talked to a buddy of mine who, was buddies with Johnny, and he was saying that Johnny changed his mind and wants to stay now. So, I mean, you don't really know what the word is. Obviously, Johnny said in the media that he wants to stay, but you can kind of see by his reaction that he isn't fully sold on staying in Calgary yet. But you gotta lock those two guys up first, and then kind of work your way down the lineup. I think, in my opinion,
and super close to home, obviously, if he goes back to Philadelphia as well. As much as his parents were always in Calgary at the Saddle Dome cheering their son on during the playoffs there, I think they wouldn't mind a shorter travel distance to see him play.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously that changes significantly if he's going to end up going from, say, Calgary to Philadelphia next year. And, of course, John Tortorella just hired as the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. So I don't know if that makes a player want to go there more, because we are talking about a very demanding coach that cracks the whip quite a bit, demands defense from his play. And Johnny's defensive game, I think, got better. Look, he was criticized
way better,
especially last year, 2 years ago, away from the puck. He didn't play the way we want him to. But I thought this past season, I mean, his defensive game improved. It got better, and you saw steps. And boy, I'll tell you what, right now, Kyle, if he goes to Philly, you better fucking plan on playing defense, or else you're going to get. And he doesn't mind Torts benching a top player. He's done this before. Look at Pierre-Luc Dubois. In Columbus, he treated that guy like a piece of shit sometimes for sure. Absolutely for, dogging it at times defensively for various reasons, and he'd staple him to the bench. He did it with Lionel for a bit as well with the Blue Jackets. He is not scared, and he will not back down from benching a top six forward if he thinks it's warranted. So if you're Johnny Gaudreau and you're going to go to Philly and you're going to leave cushy Calgary here, make sure you're mindful of what's waiting for you here on the other side. A demanding coach that's going to make you play away from the puck and a 200-foot game at all times, or else you're not going to play as much.
Yeah, and the other thing about Calgary too is, can they afford to keep both guys as well as re-sign some of these other guys? I mean, you have Manji has his contract up as well, so you got to think about re-signing him. Monahan. Do we trade Monahan? I mean, obviously Monahan, it came out that Monty's
I'm ready to say good riddance to Monahan, quite honestly.
Yeah,
he's frustrated the fuck out of me.
Yeah. I've wanted them to deal Monahan for a while now. I think it would have been smarter to deal him a couple years ago when he had more value. And now that it's come out that he's had double hip surgery now.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So who knows how he's going to feel going into next year? You saw him come into this past season, and he did not look like the old Monahan. But then again, you look at it too, Monty and Johnny are best buddies. So if they deal Monty, then maybe that's even less of a reason for Johnny to want to stay. So whoever Tree Living's got to make a good decision and figure it out. And also whoever the cap guy here in Calgary has to figure out a way to keep both these guys without giving away too much.
Yeah, no question. So we'll see what happens with Calgary. It's a big off season for them. Johnny Gaudreau, what's going to happen with him? The rumor mill churning that he might be going to Philly. We'll have to wait and see if that comes to fruition.
And
so
who do they
I don't know if
you
you made
it.
Yes, obviously. And where does Calgary go after that? But I was just saying, I'm thinking Kyle's resembling someone to me, and I couldn't think of it for a little Jacob Markstrom, believe it or not. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah, a little resemblance you have to Jake Martin, minus the beard. Yeah.
I haven't gotten that one before. I'll take that one as a compliment for sure.
Yeah, there we go. Someone else we had a couple weeks ago looks exactly like Gabe Landeskog, and I'm like, Gabe Landeskog's a great captain. It's not a bad comparison right there, or someone to have a
good-looking guy too.
No question. Yeah, Gabe Landeskog, a great player. Like, he'll score, he'll do everything for you. He'll fight.
Yeah.
It's a great player, and it's fun to watch. Fun to watch him in the Avs, which is a great segue to what we'll get into in a minute, and that's Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final on Saturday night, Lightning and Avs. So we'll get into that in just a second. But first, I want to ask, did you have a Stanley Cup final prediction before the playoffs started? And if so, is it still standing?
I had Calgary and Tampa. I wanted to see Calgary and Tampa go. I mean, I had a feeling Colorado was going to get there, but being, the Calgary Flames fan, I was a little bit
Yeah.
biased in the West. I hate Tampa because of 04, as I'm sure every Flames fan will tell you.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to see Calgary and Tampa, and Calgary beat them this time. But obviously, Calgary's not there. Colorado is. But I did have Tampa going to the finals in my bracket, as much as I didn't want to see them there either.
See, I got one of two right as well, but the one I got right was Colorado. I had Colorado, Carolina from and this is from before the season. This isn't just a pre-playoff prediction. This was before the season. I said Carolina and Colorado. So I got one out of two. I'll take that. A lot can change from October to June. And the fact that I got one of the teams in the Stanley Cup final, I'll take it. I'm happy with that. Game 2 is Saturday night, Denver, Colorado, Ball Arena. Colorado minus 155, home favorites here in Game 2, leading the series 1-0. Total of 6 here in Game 2 here. And look, I already lean in Tampa Bay for Game 2. I mentioned that yesterday when Joe Madden was our guest on the show yesterday. She also kind of likes Colorado as well in Game 2. For me, though, I'm going to probably stick with Tampa Bay, just like I said yesterday. I mean, they've been very good off a loss. You actually look at Vasilevsky's numbers in particular in these playoffs. In Game 1, he has like a 3.4 goals against average, 883 save percentage. I mean, those are awful numbers for a goalie of his caliber. To have those numbers, those are his Game 1 numbers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And then you look at Game 2 to Game 7. This year in the playoffs for Vasilevsky, it's like a 1.98 goals against average, 940 save percentage, and an 11-3 record, for the Lightning and for him. So it's like this Lightning team is like, all right, Game 1, maybe we lose, but we take a game to feel out the opponent, get used to what they're throwing at us. We'll be fine. If we lose Game 1, it's not the end of the world. They've been here, done that. They know it's a series. They know it's first to 4 games. They're not going to panic after losing Game 1. We saw that against Toronto. We saw that against the New York Rangers, where they actually lost the first 2 games of that series, came back and won the next 4.
First time in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they just don't panic after losing Game 1. They know it's a long series. They make their adjustments. They make their corrections. And look, John Cooper said it. They didn't play anywhere close to their best, and yet they were 1 shot away from winning that game. It still went to overtime. So there's probably a lot of room for improvement for the Lightning. You've got to expect Braden Point to feel a little bit better, more comfortable with a game under his belt. When you're off for a long period of time, maybe the first game, it takes to get your legs under you. But I think having the game now under his belt is going to help him. Stamkos didn't have any points in Game 1. He's actually been, if you look at his game log here through the playoffs, when Stamkos is held to without a point in one playoff game, he usually hits the score sheet in the next game. That's been the pattern. He's gotten at least 1 point in every game in these playoffs, Steven Stamkos, after being held off the score sheet in the previous game. So right away for props, Steven Stamkos is one player I'm interested in. I keep going to the well with Andre Palat. This is absolutely insane that we keep getting incredible prices for him to get a point. He has been a point-producing machine for the Lightning here in the playoffs, especially lately. Now, earlier in the playoffs, he was getting most of his points at home, but he's starting to get points on the road. He got a terrific goal, terrific feed from Nikita Kucherov in Game 1, and he had a 2-point game that night, and he's only minus 136 to get a point here in Game 2. Andre Palat, I think, continues to be very undervalued here for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We also talked about McKinnon and the fact he's averaged over 10 shots on goal per game at home in the playoffs. I mean, he's just a wild west shooter right now. Insane. OK Corral, shootout at the OK Corral right here for Nate McKinnon, averaging 10 shots on goal per game. And his shots on goal props are usually around 4.5, like they were in Game 1. Let me see if it's still that way for McKinnon. They've moved it up to 5, so they keep moving that price up a little bit, but it's hard to bet under. This guy shoots the puck a lot, and he's averaging, like I said, double figures in shots on goal per game. He had some games where he had 12 shots on goal, at home in a playoff game. Absolutely insane. So those are some of the props I'm looking at early on. Arturi Lehkonen, I think, could be undervalued in this series. He's starting to feel it, and as long as Kadri remains out for Colorado. You can trace back to his injury when Evander Kane slammed him into the boards there against Colorado. You can trace it back to his absence is when we saw Lehkonen's offensive game start to pick up, because he's being asked to play more. He's getting more responsibility, more power play time now. And he scored the series winner in overtime against Edmonton. He scored again in game 1 against Tampa Bay. I think his props, to score a goal, to get a point, shots on goal, all of those player props for Artturi Lehkonen, I think are probably also worth a look. So I'm going to be on Tampa, first period, full game, money line split, because I actually think in the first 20 minutes, Kyle, they will come out strong, knowing that they didn't have a good first period in game 1 when they fell behind 3-1. So that's the way I'm going to approach it. Kyle, what do you think here? Game 2, Saturday night, Tampa Bay, Colorado.
Yeah, I think the big thing, touching on what you said, Point being back and already and having a game under his belt now, I think that's going to be, the biggest thing for Tampa in the Stanley Cup final is Point going to produce and up to the level that he has been until he was injured. With Point being in and Kadri being out, that kind of tips the scales a little bit in terms of, at least on paper, in terms of, the star power that's on the ice. Because Kadri was doing wonders for Colorado, scoring, hat tricks. He was scoring, getting points almost every game. His aggressiveness, getting under guys' skins, drawing penalties. That's a huge loss. That's a huge loss for Colorado. And with Point coming back, that's, without both of them, you could see it kind of leaning more towards Colorado. But with Point back, even if he is still a little bit banged up and Kadri out fully, I think the scales are tipping towards Tampa. But I do think that Colorado still has the offensive and the defensive ability to keep Tampa from scoring at will. And with Makar and McKinnon, they'll be able to get some points up front as well. I want to give game 2 to Colorado still, with them being at home. But I mean, you look at last game, they were up 3-1. You come back, you miss that second period, you come back to watch the third, and it's tie game. All of a sudden, the next shot wins in overtime. I'm going to give game 2 to Colorado, but if Tampa does win, I think Braden Point will get the game-winning goal.
Braden Point. So, and Braden Point Braden Point props again could be worth a little sprinkle as well, especially to get a goal, because obviously the first game, it was kind of a get back up to game speed, type of game for Braden Point when he's been out for the period of time that he's been. So he was a little bit quiet offensively than normally he is, but I think you're right. He'll be more noticeable. I think everybody can pretty much agree, and it's pretty logical and straightforward to see why.
And the game played 18 minutes too in that game coming back, so he was still getting that ice time, and I think in game 2 his ice time will increase depending on how he's feeling going in, and from there his offensive production will increase as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think they took it, just eased him, glided him back in, to obviously you're talking the Stanley Cup final. It's hard to just say, you're coming back from a significant injury here. You've been out for a few weeks. Let's throw you in there and give you 22, 23 minutes of ice time. It doesn't always work that. And when you're Tampa Bay, you've certainly got a very loaded forward group where you don't have that pressure to throw him in there for 22, 23 minutes if you're worried that he needs a game to really get back up to that game speed of a Stanley Cup final. But I still thought in game 1, Kyle, you can talk about this. Didn't it look like he was still skating all right? To me, he was skating fine. And I think it's only going to get better from him game 2 and onward.
Yeah, I think so. And Braden Point's a tough guy. I mean, he's from Calgary as well, Calgary here as well. So I've watched him play since he got into the league. He's a great player, and he's a tough kid, and he's not going to let, not a little injury, but being a little bit banged up, especially in the Stanley Cup final, hold him back at all. He's going to go out there until, you saw him skating when he was out, he skated until he literally fell down. He's not taking it easy. He's going to push himself to get through it. He falls down, he gets back up. He's just one of those guys that's a peer, you tell young kids, guys to look at, guys that want to play like and be like. Braden Point's one of those guys for sure.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And we saw it again in the Toronto series. I remember that the game he got hurt, game 7, where he has that injury. We think, he's out for the rest of the game. I'm worried about the rest of the season. And there he is in the second period trying to come back. I mean, more guts than brains, but still, you got to admire the guts. I
That's a
mean, it's
hockey
just
player for you, though.
it is, I mean, especially in a game 7, right? Your team
Yeah,
season's on the line, and look, they were this close to getting knocked out by Toronto, and maybe not
yeah,
even being at the point that no pun intended, that they're on, that they're at right now here in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. But that shows you how tough Braden Point is, and he's not afraid to get involved in scrums after the whistle. He's fought a few times as well.
yeah,
He's not scared to do that as well, kind of like Landeskog on the Colorado side. So no, he's a great player. Tampa Bay's having great to have him back. Obviously, are happy to have him back. Again, his ice time was a little bit lower than normal in Game 1. I think that was by design. You watch Braden
for
Point.
sure.
Not that he's for sure going to score a goal or get on the score sheet, but you're right. He's going to be more noticeable, and he's going to be way more comfortable, Kyle, out on that ice in Game 2 on Saturday night. Who do you think under the radar is a player that might step up, in your opinion, in this game for either side?
Oh, that's a good question.
Outside of the obvious, like no Stamkos, no, not Kucherov, not Palat, not McKinnon, not Rantanen, not Landeskog. Who, other than some of those players on either side, could you see stepping up?
I think Bowen Byram on the Colorado side, you've seen
It's a
him
good pick. He's skating
slowly
really
start to
well.
get, yeah, and you've
Yep.
seen him, even as just the playoffs have gone along, develop and as a player and really step up his level in playoff hockey. On the Tampa side, I think Hagel is as a guy to kind of keep in the back of your head. He's been struggling a little bit, and you saw kind of Makar shove him right off behind the net the other night. But Hagel, I've seen Hagel play since he was in the WHL. He's a big, strong, tough kid that if he gets an opportunity, he can finish it. So if your top scorers are not producing that game and Hagel gets a shot, he can finish for you. And same on the other side. If Byram has an opportunity, he's getting to the point in his career, or at least in his game right now, where he's dangerous. And that could be a turning point for both teams if one of these guys really steps up.
Yeah, those are good picks. I'm sticking with the under the radar players, especially for props, and we'll get into this more on Saturday. We'll be on at noon Eastern live with Vito, our regular guest from on the weekends from Latvia. Rinus Vidalins will be joining us Saturday and Sunday as he always does, and we'll get into in depth even more of the props for Game 2 on the Saturday show. But I'm going to stick with some of the players I had success. Kyle, I cashed goal scorer props of plus 300 or greater with Arturi Lehkonen, who I mentioned earlier. I think he's one of those guys that's going to be an impact player for Colorado. He already has been in this series outside of the big guns. And for Tampa Bay, I'm going to go back to the well with Nick Paul, who got the first period goal, plus 300 or plus 375 he was to score a goal. So you turn $100 into 375 if you took that goal scorer prop with Nick Paul. He's had chances in every game, and shorthanded, he's always dangerous. He's always one of the better penalty killers for Tampa Bay. John Cooper plays him a lot. He's learned to count on him at both ends of the ice, and he has gotten his offensive game going. So Nick Paul, who's going to get paid in the offseason, he's an unrestricted free agent.
Definitely.
He's going to get a nice contract. Someone is going to see this performance here in the Stanley Cup playoffs and say, we could use that.
And that's the shitty thing too, when these underrated guys get a new push in the playoffs and they're in their last year of their contract, they're going into the offseason saying, hey, look what I did. And like you said, one of these other teams might see that and pay them a little bit more than the team that they're on right now. So
no, it's exactly right. We always say, watch out for the players. You could say maybe you don't trust them, you don't like their game, you don't think they're very good, but always watch out for the motivational element, the incentive element of a player playing for a contract, like Nick Paul is. And you're seeing him, he wants to win a cup too, and he's playing on a great team. He wants to win, no question, but he wants to get that mucho dinero next year as well, and a big money contract. And how do you do that? You have one hell of a Stanley Cup playoffs. And a great regular season as well, which he did have between Ottawa, where he started the year, then he got traded to Tampa Bay, and he's played well there, and he's looking for that big money contract. Players get incentivized to play extremely well the season going into a year where their contract's up, and they're playing for that big money. That's why, just to compare to the NFL, I'm fascinated to see what Daniel Jones does this year for the New York Giants, because this is a guy that if he plays well, they declined the option on his contract, but he's going to be a potential free agent next year. But if he has that big year with the Giants, it looks like they've got a good coach bringing a Dable in from Buffalo. The offensive and defensive lines are better. He's got tons of weapons at receiver. Maybe Barkley finally can stay healthy at running back. I mean, the pieces are in place. The table has been set for Daniel Jones to have maybe his best season. And if he does have a good season and a big season, he's going to get paid next year. You watch how that motivates a guy like that, just like what we're seeing right now, Kyle, with Nick Paul.
Yeah, I mean, look at Evander Kane too. What's going to happen with him and his contract? Obviously, he's not in the Stanley Cup final, but if you want to touch on some other guys, Evander Kane's the big one. Is Edmonton gonna pay him, or is another team gonna try and pay him, or are they gonna say, oh, it's just because he's with McDavid and Draisaitl and these guys in this team, that's why he's popping off like he did in the playoffs and even in the regular season. I mean, the guy was scoring at will since Edmonton picked him up. But then you look at his outside antics and, is he a room guy? And, there's a lot of things to consider with Kane for sure. What do you think is going to happen with him? Do you think he's going to get paid by Edmonton or another team, or?
I think he's gone. Edmonton wants him back, and I think he liked being there. And of course, you play with Connor McDavid.
Who wouldn't like playing with Connor McDavid?
Makes you look great. He'll make a garbage can look like a good hockey player.
Yeah,
playing next to him on his line. But no, exactly. I mean, Evander Kane played great, and it was a perfect fit. Like his skill set and his ability to finish in tight quarters around the net, and just an ability to put the puck in the net and finish your chances. That's what Edmonton missed alongside McDavid for a long period, and they found it with Evander Kane. So they want him back badly, but they're not going to overpay for him. They can't afford to overpay for him. And Evander Kane, we know he's had gambling issues off the ice.
Yeah.
He says it wasn't sports. It was all table games. It was poker. It was baccarat, and baccarat can really get you in trouble. I mean, that's a thing that could really, really get you behind the eight ball if you start losing and you don't stop, playing that.
I mean, and he had a penthouse in Vegas at one point too. I don't know if he still does, but I remember him in a Barstool interview. They went to his penthouse, and it was almost like an MTV Cribs type thing where he literally just had cash, like pulling out cash. It's like, oh, well, where's all that at the tables now? And that's how you find yourself $27 million in debt or whatever it is.
Buying a shit ton of homes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
or money that you're likely to lose at some point, potentially.
Yeah.
Because you got a gambling craze, and that's exactly what happened with Kane. So he wants to get paid. He needs money. He probably needs money a little bit too.
Sure.
So I don't know if Edmonton can give him that money. I think he loved his time there. I think he looked happy. I think he actually fit in nicely. I don't think there were antics, in the dressing room. I actually think he probably was on his best behavior. Everybody says he was a great teammate. He didn't cause any fuss or any issues. Now, you could say, hey, they're lying or they're maybe hiding something. I don't know if there's a reason for them to hide anything. I actually think there was a good hockey team, and he didn't want to upset the apple cart. They put the olive branch out there and said, hey, Evander, we're going to bring you in. We're taking a chance on you. Why the fuck would he go in there and upset shit and be a disturbance? When after everything they did to bring you in, I think you said, I got to do it the right way here with this team. I got to act accordingly. Be on my best behavior. I think he was, and obviously on the ice he produced. He was just beyond terrific. Yeah. And I think he likes it there. He would like to stay there, and they definitely want him back, but I think the money is going to end up standing between the Oilers bringing Kane back next year.
Yeah, I don't know if another team would pay him either, though, is my thing. Especially, I don't know how much he's going to ask for, but I think other teams are going to look at him and one, see the outside antics, and because it's not going to be a sure thing. You bring him in, you're going to see what's going to happen in terms of him off the ice and in the room. But I also think they're going to look at him and say, hey, I mean, he was with McDavid, and obviously Kane has always been an offensive guy who can produce and obviously be physical on the ice. But his skill level with McDavid, that's a different game. That's different than him going out there with Johnny or Lindholm. It's not to put those guys down or anything, but I mean, it's a different animal. He's out there with McDavid and Draisaitl, two guys that just set records in the playoffs for points, even though Draisaitl was basically playing on one leg.
Which was commendable, by the way. And all this nonsense about Darnell Nurse, I'm defending my fellow Hamilton man, Darnell Nurse, who's from Hamilton, just like I am. I'm going to defend him. People said, oh, he played like crap against Colorado. You go out on that ice with a torn fucking hip flexor, you stupid fuck, and see how you do. I mean, stop giving him so many problems and so many verbal tongue lashings for looking so bad in that series.
Yeah.
He's doing the best he can. He's going up against this incredible Colorado team. I mean, cut the guy some slack. He's playing through a torn hip flexor. What do you want the guy to do? You're playing a great Colorado team.
Yeah.
Sure, he struggled a little bit. I don't argue that, but let's cut the guy some slack. He's playing through a torn hip flexor. Would you do that? Probably not.
The injuries were insane this year for all, like, in playoffs in general. I mean, look at all the goalies that were out. I mean, Saros didn't play one game. Kemper almost had his eyeball taken out. It's insane. And then you look at, like you said, Nursey, Draisaitl with his ankle, Tanev with his shoulder.
Barely got back to the bench on one shift, Draisaitl, after getting knocked down. Had to limp back to the bench. You see him bent over, on the bench. The camera zooms in. He's in severe, obvious pain, and yet he goes back out there for the next shift in a must-win game. I mean, warrior. That's
you
the
can
word.
See there were video clips that popped up of guys hacking at his ankles too. I mean, it was
take no prisoners. They knew he was hurting there, and it's like we don't give two shits. Yeah, let's go after it.
He was not trying to hide the fact that he was injured at all. I mean, how could you when you're in that much pain? I don't know if it came out what exactly his injury was. I think it was like a high ankle sprain or something like that. But
he got slew-footed at one point. Because you talk about into that same spot, that same ankle, and I'm like, geez, that's definitely gonna be a concern. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you got to commend Draisaitl for that performance with playing on one leg that the entire playoffs. But back to Kane, who is someone going to pay him? That's going to be that's my question. Is someone going to pay him, or is he going to take a smaller deal to stay in Edmonton and keep lighting it up?
Yeah, maybe the market isn't going to be as beaming about Evander Kane as he hopes and he thinks it will be. Because look, he's going to look at this and say, I just performed ridiculously well for a team with Connor McDavid, the Oilers on it. My value is at the zenith right now. It's as high as it can be. I got to cash in large right now. And I think that's going to end up superseding loyalty. That's going to end up superseding how great a fit. I think he knows it was a great fit in Edmonton, but that big money that could be waiting from somewhere else. I think he's going to get paid by a lot of other teams a little bit. Now, how much more is the question? You're right in terms of the amount, but he will get paid more than Edmonton can, I think, currently afford to pay for him. There's going to be a bunch of other teams that can already afford to pay him more. And I think he's probably going to gravitate to one of those teams because at the end of the day, I think he's a money guy. He's proven that in the past.
For sure. I mean, you can also kind of throw back at him like, hey,
all about the Benjamins, baby. Yeah, that's what it is for Evander Kane. I'm sure he's got that song in one of his collections there.
You could throw back at him too, like, you did all this offensive production, but you also took yourself out of game 5 or game 4, I guess, with Colorado in terms of injuring Kadri and getting yourself suspended for a game. Which who knows if Kane played that game, maybe they won and maybe the series turns around, but probably not. But I mean, that's you can bring up his undisciplined actions there as well, but.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're both hesitant on saying he's returning to Ed. I don't think he is. I think someone's going to pay him more than Edmonton can afford to. And I think that's probably where he ends up going. Yeah. Gets the money, gets the bag, grabs the bag, as we like to say, because of the fact that, again, that's where he's shown that his most primary concern in his life, I hate to say that, even among family for a bit and wife and kids and all that, was money.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to end up going where the money is when it's all said and done. Excellent stuff with our guest here, Kyle Forge. Awesome stuff. Great. Looking forward to game 2, of course, for the Stanley Cup final. DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NHL. Want to talk about that. Our great partners, new customers bet just $1 on any NHL team. Get $150 in free bets if they win. If DraftKings Sportsbook isn't available in your state, you can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy hockey contests. DraftKings giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings app, sign up for an account, use the promo code THPN. Bet just $1 on any NHL team. Get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Must be 21 years of age or older. Must reside in a DraftKings Sportsbook state or province. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Download the DraftKings app. Sign up for an account. Use the promo code THPN. I just find it funny. We do the 1-800-GAMBLER reference on every promo ad. How fitting we just talked about Evander Kane.
I wasn't
right?
going to say it, but yeah,
yeah, I just did.
Works in there.
I just
Yeah,
did.
no, that's all
I'm one of those people that's the racy jokes are in my wheelhouse. I sometimes go there. Like I said to someone, good friend of mine
too. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't hold shit back. If you see
No.
Kyle's Twitter, my Twitter, yeah, we don't hold anything back. Just like a friend of mine going to Chicago for training for work. I said, try not to get shot while you're there.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, I had a player that played for me with the Mustangs, and he was we're pretty good buddies now, but he was just in Nashville after I got back. I was there for about 3 months, but when I got back, he went out, and then they ended up going to Memphis too for a couple of days. I was like, don't get shot. It's not Broadway.
Yeah, they've had issues with shit. Chicago just beyond bad with the number of shootings that have been going on in that city. It's sad to see. It's such a wonderful city to go to and travel to, and great city. I mean, obviously, and a great metropolitan U.S. city, and to see it being bombarded by violence and shootings is just awful. But nevertheless, it is still a great city. You just hope that subsides at some point. No question. All right. So, but by the way, we're going to get to best bets. Have a best bet in mind, Kyle, because we'll get to that in a minute before we wrap up the show. But tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. Talk about, and you're doing a podcast with a longtime professional hockey player, Zach Boychuk, who played with the Carolina Hurricanes for many years. I think cup of coffee with a couple other NHL teams. Then he went over to Russia, I know, for a bit, KHL, and he just finished a season in Germany with Eisbären Berlin. So he's been busy overseas playing the last few years. So talk about you and Zach Boychuk with your show.
Yeah, so we started a podcast a little bit through COVID called the Athlete and Artist Show. Obviously, Zach being the athlete, being the professional hockey player, myself being the artist. By artist, recording artist, I make music. I've been involved in music since I was 9 years old. So it was kind of hockey and music to start, and then music was the one thing that's carried with me throughout my entire life. So as I mentioned, I was in Nashville for 3 months writing music, mostly focused on pop, hip hop, and now getting into the countryside. But Chucky and I built this podcast. We did one season of it and kind of took a break because he went into his second season in Berlin, and I was out down south there. But we called the Athlete and Artist Show because we both found that we have very different opinions on, or different outlooks on different things. So but we still have, a good chemistry, and we're obviously good buddies. So we can talk about something or disagree on something without, going head to head or getting disrespectful, things like that. But Zach was one of the guys, one of the first athletes, up there with Paul Bissonnette, or at least on the hockey side, that really started using social media to their advantage and, building brands for themselves outside of the sport. And that was one thing that Zach and I wanted to talk about on our podcast with our guests is, all of our guests will have their main career, whether it's music, sport, or crypto. We talk a lot about now too. But how did you use social media or use your?
I don't even think crypto people that love crypto want to hear about crypto right now. I mean, my gosh, what a freaking bloodbath it's been the last few months. Is that shit turning around or what? I mean, it's just been really tough for Bitcoin, and I see the tanking prices. I mean, it's just it's been rough here these last few months.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that happened in 2018, though, when you look at the charts. I mean, it's just following a trend. So it's going to get down once it finds the bottom. Then, it could be a couple months before it booms again, or it could be a year, it could be 2 years. But once it finds that bottom, then things will start to slowly start looking up. But yeah, Zach and I got into that last year too. I mean, we started talking about that on the podcast, or working with different crypto projects to either help promote them or work on the marketing side. There were just a lot of different things in COVID that you had to adapt to, whether if he wasn't playing, what was he doing? If I couldn't, go make music or do a show, how could I figure out another source of income type thing? But
that's and the good thing about your podcast, right? It's not even though Zach Boychuk, hockey player, it's not just all about hockey. They talk about different topics, different subjects. Like you've got a wide variety, right, of different subjects and topics. You'll talk with between the two of you and whatever guest you might have on that particular show, right?
Yeah, and we've had a range of guests too. I mean, our first guest was Paul Bissonnette from Spittin' Chicklets, and obviously former NHLer. We've had Chloe Touré, who was Playmate of the Year. She used to live in the Playboy Mansion was handpicked by Hugh Hefner. She's a good friend of
Paul
ours.
Bissonnette and a Playboy Playmate. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's pretty You've done good with the guest list.
yeah.
Yeah.
We had Brett Kissel too, Canadian country star. We've had the Sheepdogs. If you're a classic rock and roll
Oh
fan,
yeah,
the
feeling
Sheepdogs came on.
good, oh, like
Yeah,
I know I should. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we've had a lot of different people. And starting off season 2, we've got Mitch Garber, who is one of the owners of the Seattle Kraken, coming on. We've got another music artist named Dill, most likely coming on. And then we've got we were talking with Ryan Straz, who used to play for the Humboldt Broncos as well. He's going to be coming on talking about sledge hockey and a lot of things that he's got going on now as well. So
there you go.
yeah.
And you got some music stuff going on the side as well. So you're a busy guy. That's Kyle Forge here. Yeah, keeping busy. And follow him on Twitter. It's actually a good follow. I endorse his, following him on Twitter at KForge, because he's very active and very outspoken, like me. That makes for a good Twitter follow. No doubt about that. All right, best bets for Game 2. Stanley Cup Final, Saturday night, Tampa Bay, Colorado. We'll start with our guest, Kyle Forge. Kyle, what do you like here for a best bet for Game 2?
I mean, I've got to take Colorado, I think, in Game 2 for sure. Do you want me to give a score as well here?
Sure.
I give it a score.
You know what? I will record what the score is. Colorado, by the way, -155 for Game 2. Kyle liking them to take a 2-0 series lead. Yep. Yeah, give me the correct score, okay, and I will write it down, because if that corrects, because you can bet correct score props. If that hits, we'll give you all the credit in the world for it.
All right. Yeah. I'm gonna go. Oh man, that was such a close game. I think it's going to be 4-3 in overtime. I think it's going to go to overtime again, but it's going to be 4-3 this time, or another 4-3, I guess. 4-3 second time in a row. It's going to be I think the scoring is really going to open up for sure again. So, maybe not 4-3. Maybe I'll go 5-4. Maybe I'll go 5-4.
Oh, even higher scoring than Game 1.
We're going to go higher scoring.
All right, Colorado -155. Best bet for Kyle. And he's going to give you a bonus little correct score prop. Just sprinkle a couple bucks on it. 5-4, Colorado. Let me see what the price is of that, just because I think you'll see a lot of books have that posted already. I'm hoping that's the case here.
Watch it be a 1-0 game now.
Well, if Tampa Bay, I kind of like Tampa Bay to win, and it'll be low scoring, I think, if Tampa Bay wins. But if Colorado wins, it's definitely more likely to be high scoring. That's Colorado 5-4 is 20-1, plus 2,000. Yep. Plus 2,000 for Colorado, 5-4, correct score. So there you go. $100 would turn into 2,000 for you if that ends up cashing in. So Colorado 5-4, but Colorado -155, the official best bet for Kyle. My best bet is going to be against Kyle, actually. It's going to be Tampa Bay, +135. I like them in this situation to bounce back strong. I like the first period as well. I'm going to split it up, first period, full game, but going to go with the full game +135 for a best bet here for this Friday show. And reminder, we're going to have a lot more Game 2 preview, analysis, side total, props Saturday for our next live show at noon Eastern. It'll be me and Vito breaking that down on the Saturday edition of the Ice Guys. Kyle, great job on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you reaching out and bringing me on. I'd love to come back anytime you need someone.
All right, we'll do that. We'll bring you back for sure in the future. Certainly next season. We're winding down with the number of shows this year, but we'll definitely have you on the radar to come back next year. Great stuff. Kyle Forge, check him out on Twitter at KForge. Reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. For our special guest, Kyle Forge, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Friday, and we'll be back Saturday, noon Eastern, for Game 2 analysis with Vito and I on the Ice Guys, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network.